Why did you take my ring? You are a common thief. I only found it. I was trying to return it.
The diamond ring sparkled under the harsh fluorescent lights of the police station, catching every angle, throwing tiny rainbows across the scarred wooden desk. Amara Okafor stood in the center of the room, her worn Ankara wrapper clinging to her thin frame, her hands trembling at her sides. Across from her, Chidinma Azuka, draped in designer silk and dripping with gold jewelry, pointed one perfectly manicured finger at Amara's face and screamed, "You stole my ring, you common thief. You thought you could take what belongs to me and get away with it." The police officer looked from the wealthy woman to the poor girl, his expression already made up. Amara's voice came out small, shaking. "No, Ma, I found it. I was trying to return it." But Chidinma's laugh was sharp and cruel, bouncing off the concrete walls. "Found it? You expect anyone to believe that? You probably planned this from the beginning, watching me, waiting for your chance." The ring sat between them on the desk, worth more money than Amara had seen in her entire 24 years of life. And in that moment, standing in that station with suspicion hanging in the air like smoke, Amara wondered if honesty had been the biggest mistake of her life. But to understand how we got here, to understand why this young woman would risk everything for the truth, we need to go back to where this story really begins. 3 days earlier, in the chaos of Yaba Market on a sweltering Lagos afternoon. If you're loving this story already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens next. And don't forget to comment below what country you're watching from and your local time right now. This is going to be emotional, I promise you. The Yaba Market stretched across 6 dusty blocks in the heart of mainland Lagos, a labyrinth of narrow pathways between wooden stalls, zinc-roofed shops, and open-air displays of everything from tomatoes to transistor radios. The air hung thick with the smell of fresh fish, frying akara, and the sweet rot of overripe fruit left too long in the sun. Generators roared from every corner, fighting against NEPA's latest power cut. Hawkers shouted their prices over each other, voices blending into a constant wave of sound that never stopped, never softened, just kept rolling on from sunrise until well past dark. Amara moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her body thin and quick, navigating the spaces between bodies like water flowing around stones. She wore a faded blue Ankara wrapper with yellow geometric patterns that had once been bright but now looked washed out from too many hand scrubs in the bucket behind their room. Her cream-colored blouse, once her Sunday best, had a small tear under the left arm that she'd tried to mend with thread that didn't quite match. Her natural black hair was pulled back tight into cornrows she'd braided herself at 4 in the morning by candlelight, the style practical and neat, meant to last 2 weeks before she'd need to redo it. In her right hand, she carried a worn brown leather bag, its strap repaired 3 times with twine, holding her purse, a handkerchief, and a small notebook where she tracked every kobo that came in and went out. Her left hand clutched a clear nylon bag with 3 tomatoes, 2 peppers, and a small piece of dried fish, tonight's dinner that had cost 150 naira she couldn't really afford to spend. She walked quickly, eyes focused ahead, not stopping to greet the familiar faces because stopping meant conversation, and conversation meant questions about Mama, and questions about Mama meant having to admit things she didn't want to say out loud. How sick she was getting, how the medicine wasn't working anymore, how the doctor said they needed to move to the expensive treatment or there wouldn't be much time left. Her mind spun with numbers, the mathematics of survival that never quite added up. Rent due in 8 days, 3,500 naira. Medicine every 3 days, 1,200 naira each time. Food, water, kerosene for the stove, transport. Her job as a salesgirl at Mrs. Obiag's fabric shop paid 25,000 naira a month, barely enough to keep them alive, nowhere near enough to save Mama's life. The hospital had quoted her 250,000 naira for the full treatment. 250,000. She'd stood in that corridor with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of disinfectant burning her nose, and the number had felt like a mountain, impossible to climb. The doctor, a tired woman with kind eyes and graying hair, had touched Amara's shoulder gently. "I'm sorry, but without this treatment, maybe 4 months. Maybe less. 4 months. Amara blinked hard, pushing the memory away. She couldn't cry here in the market, where everyone would see, where everyone would ask. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on getting home before the light completely died, on heating the soup and making sure Mama ate something, even if Amara herself only had Gary and water. She turned down the narrow pathway toward the market's main exit, passing by Baba Taiwo's phone repair kiosk, past the women selling roasted plantain and groundnuts, past the young boys hawking pure water in their yellow and blue sachets, stacked high in metal basins balanced on their heads. The crowd thinned slightly near the exit, and she could breathe a little easier. That's when she saw it. A small object caught the fading sunlight, something bright and sharp lying in the dirt near the gutter, half hidden under a crushed plastic bag. Most people walked right past it, focused on their phones or their conversations, or simply tired from the day's hustling. But Amara saw it, saw the way it glinted, the way it seemed to pulse with captured light. She stopped walking. People flowed around her, some bumping her shoulder, one woman hissing, "Move now, why you standing like tree?" But Amara didn't move. She stared at the object, her heart beginning to pound in a slow, heavy rhythm. It couldn't be. Not here. Not just lying in the dirt of Yaba Market like a lost button or a forgotten coin. She bent down slowly, carefully, setting her nylon bag on the ground. Her fingers trembled as she reached out and picked up the object, brushing away the dust and grit. The moment she touched it, she knew. She knew this was real. Knew this was something that didn't belong in her world. It was a ring. But not just any ring. A diamond ring that even in the dusty fading light of the market seemed to contain its own source of illumination. The center stone was massive, easily the size of her thumbnail, cut in a way that made it throw light in every direction. Smaller diamonds surrounded it in an intricate platinum setting, each one catching and reflecting light like tiny captured stars. Even the band itself was covered in smaller diamonds. The whole piece so heavy with precious metal and stones that it seemed impossible something so valuable could have ended up here in the dirt. Amara's hands shook. She looked around quickly, expecting someone to shout, to run toward her demanding their property back. But the crowd continued flowing past, oblivious. No one was searching frantically. No one was crying out for a lost ring. She closed her fist around it and straightened up, grabbing her nylon bag with her other hand. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her mind raced. This ring, she knew without understanding exactly how, was worth more money than she'd ever seen. More than enough for Mama's treatment. More than enough to pay rent for a year. More than enough to change everything. She walked quickly now, not toward home, but toward a corner near the market mosque, where fewer people gathered, where she could think. Her breath came fast and shallow. She opened her hand and looked at the ring again. And even here, in the dimmer light away from the crowd, it sparkled with an almost offensive beauty. The kind of beauty that belonged on the hand of someone who'd never worried about rent, never counted tomatoes, never washed the same wrapper 3 times a week because it was the only decent one she owned. Amara thought of Mama, thought of her lying on the thin mattress in their single room, coughing into a rag, trying to hide the blood but failing. Thought of the doctor's words. 4 months, maybe less. This ring could save her, could buy the medicine, the treatment, everything they needed. But even as the thought formed, another voice rose in her mind, her mother's voice from 1,000 different moments throughout her childhood. "Amara, my daughter, we may not have money, but we have something more valuable. We have our character. We have our dignity. No matter how poor we are, we don't take what doesn't belong to us. We don't build our lives on someone else's loss." Amara closed her eyes. The ring felt heavy in her palm, heavier than its actual weight. It felt like a test, like God himself had placed this in her path to see what she would do. Would she become a thief to save her mother? Would she trade her integrity for survival? The call to prayer echoed from the mosque nearby, the haunting sound of the adhan drifting across the market. Amara stood in the fading light, a poor girl holding a fortune, and made a decision that would change everything. She would return it. She would find the owner, even if it meant watching Mama die, even if it meant they stayed poor, even if no one would ever know the temptation she'd faced and overcome. She would do the right thing, because that's who Mama had raised her to be. Amara opened her eyes and looked down at the ring one more time. She noticed something she hadn't seen before, an inscription inside the band. She held it close to her eyes, squinting in the dim light. The letters were small but clear, engraved in elegant script. "Forever yours, Chaik, August 2024. Chaik, the owner's name, or maybe the giver's name. Amara's chest loosened slightly. This was an engagement ring, she realized. Someone's proposal, someone's promise of forever. And whoever lost this wasn't just losing money. They were losing a symbol of love, a representation of commitment. That made returning it feel even more right. But how? How did she find this chique? How did she find the owner? She had no phone credit to make calls, no internet to search, no connections to wealthy people who owned rings like this. She stared at the inscription, trying to think. Then she remembered. Mrs. Obiagu, her employer at the fabric shop, had a younger sister who worked as a cleaner at the 4 Points Hotel in Victoria Island. Rich people stayed there, rich people who could afford rings like this. Maybe, just maybe, someone had reported it missing. Maybe there was a reward being offered. Amara carefully wrapped the ring in her handkerchief and tucked it deep into her worn leather bag, underneath her purse and notebook, where no pickpocket could easily reach it. She picked up her nylon bag with the tomatoes and fish and began walking again, this time with purpose. She'd go home, make sure Mama ate dinner, and tomorrow morning she'd find a way to get to Victoria Island. She'd find the owner of this ring and return it. What Amara didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as she walked through the darkening market, clutching a fortune to her chest, was that finding the owner would be the easy part. The hard part, the part that would test her in ways she'd never imagined, was about to begin. Because the woman who owned that ring wasn't just wealthy, she was cruel. And she didn't believe in poor girls who did the right thing. The test was just beginning. The room Amara shared with her mother measured exactly 3 meters by 4 meters. Amara knew this because she'd once helped Mama measure it for a new mat that never got bought. The walls were painted a faded yellow that showed patches of grey concrete underneath, where the rain had leaked through cracks in the ceiling. A single small window with a torn lace curtain let in weak evening light and the constant sounds of their neighborhood. Children playing, generators rumbling, neighbors quarreling, gospel music from Mama Chidi's room next door. Their belongings were few and carefully arranged. A narrow wooden bed with a thin mattress covered by a faded pink and green floral bedspread took up most of one wall. That's where Mama slept. Amara slept on a mat on the floor, which she rolled up each morning and stored under the bed. A wooden stool served as both chair and side table. A small corner held their kerosene stove, 2 dented pots, 3 plastic plates, 2 cups, and a plastic basin for washing. Their clothes hung from nails on the wall, Amara's 2 wrappers, 3 blouses, and 1 Sunday dress, Mama's 3 wrappers and aging church clothes she hadn't worn in months. On a small wooden crate covered with a piece of cloth, Mama kept a framed photo of Amara's father, dead now 6 years from a motorcycle accident while working as an Okada rider. Beside it, a small Bible with a broken spine and a rosary blessed by the priest at Our Lady of Assumption Church, where they used to attend before Mama got too sick to walk that far. When Amara pushed open their door that evening, her mother was awake, propped up against 2 folded wrappers that served as pillows. Mama Amara was 61 years old, but looked much older, her face deeply lined, her once full cheeks now sunken, her eyes clouded with the particular exhaustion that comes from fighting a losing battle against pain. Her grey hair, which she'd once kept braided neatly, now hung in loose thin plaits around her face. She wore a faded nightgown, white with small blue flowers, the same one she'd been wearing for 3 days because changing clothes had become too exhausting. But when she saw Amara, her face lit up with that smile that never changed, that smile that reminded Amara of childhood, of happier times when Papa was alive and Mama sold oranges in the market, and they'd had enough to eat and never worried about hospitals. Mama's voice came out raspy and weak. "My daughter, you're home." Amara forced brightness into her voice, setting down her bags. "Yes, Mama. How are you feeling today? Did you take the medicine this afternoon?" Mama nodded slowly. "I took it. The pain is better today, not so bad." She was lying. Amara could see it in the way her mother held herself carefully, the way she breathed shallow to avoid moving her chest too much, the way her hands gripped the bedspread with unconscious tension. But Amara didn't call her on the lie. They'd both become experts at pretending. "That's good, Mama. I brought fish for the soup. The small piece, but it will be enough." She moved to the corner and lit the kerosene stove, her movements practiced and efficient. She'd cooked in this corner for 6 years since Papa died, and they'd moved from the slightly better room they'd shared with him to this smaller, cheaper one. Her hands knew every step, pouring water into the pot, washing the dried fish, cutting the tomatoes on a small wooden board balanced on her lap as she sat on the floor. While the soup heated, she glanced at her mother. Mama's eyes had closed again, her breathing steady but labored. Amara reached for her leather bag, carefully extracting the handkerchief-wrapped ring. She unfolded the cloth and looked at it again in the dimmer light of their room. It still took her breath away, the impossible luxury of it, the weight of all those diamonds catching the orange glow from the kerosene flame. She thought about the inscription. Forever yours, Chaik, August 2024. This year, this month, someone was supposed to propose with this ring, or maybe already had. Someone was supposed to wear this as a symbol of a promise, a future, a love that would last forever. And now it was lost, and somewhere, someone was devastated. Or maybe not someone good. Maybe someone who had so much wealth that losing a ring like this barely registered. Maybe someone who'd simply buy another one and never think twice. The thought stirred resentment in Amara's chest, quick and hot. While Mama coughed blood into rags and they counted naira to buy fish bones for soup, someone else lost rings worth hundreds of thousands and didn't even notice. She wrapped the ring back up quickly, ashamed of the bitterness. It didn't matter if the owner was good or bad. It didn't matter if they'd miss it or not. The ring wasn't hers. That was all that mattered. The soup finished cooking, a thin broth with the tomatoes, peppers, and small pieces of fish, seasoned with salt and one Maggi cube. The yellow wrapper crinkled in Amara's fingers as she crumbled it in. She poured some into a plastic bowl, added a small ball of Iba from the gari she'd made that morning, and brought it to her mother. "Mama, eat. You need strength." Her mother opened her eyes and looked at the bowl, then at Amara with such love and pain mixed together that Amara had to look away. "Thank you, my daughter. What about you?" "I already ate at the shop." Another lie. Mrs. Obiagu had offered her leftover jollof rice at lunch, but Amara had said no, saving her appetite for the evening so the food would stretch further. Now she'd give everything to Mama and make do with gari and water. It was routine by now. Mama tried to sit up more, and Amara helped her, adjusting the wrapper pillows behind her back. Her mother felt lighter than she should, the weight falling away week by week until it seemed she might simply float away altogether. The thought made Amara's throat tight. She held the bowl while Mama ate slowly, taking small bites, her hand trembling slightly with the effort. After only a few mouthfuls, she shook her head. "I'm full, baby. You eat the rest." "Mama, you barely ate anything." "I'm full. I promise." Her voice firmed up slightly, that mother voice that said arguing would be useless. So Amara finished the bowl herself, the warm food hitting her empty stomach and spreading comfort through her body. Tomorrow she'd eat better. Tomorrow, after she returned the ring, maybe there'd be a reward. Maybe enough for a proper meal, chicken and rice, the kind they used to have on Sundays. After cleaning up, she prepared for bed, changing into her sleeping wrapper, braiding her hair tighter for the night. Mama had already dozed off again, her breathing rough and rattling in her chest. Amara spread her mat on the floor beside the bed and lay down, but sleep didn't come. She stared at the ceiling, at the water stains that looked like faces if you studied them long enough. She thought about the ring tucked in her leather bag hanging on a nail above her head. She thought about tomorrow, about going to Victoria Island, about finding this cheeky person, about doing the right thing, even though the right thing might mean watching Mama die while someone else spent money on champagne and gold-plated faucets. The anger rose again, sharper this time. Why? Why did God make the world this way? Why did some people have so much they could lose diamond rings and not notice, while others had so little they died from diseases that money could cure? What kind of justice was that? What kind of plan? She heard Mama shift on the bed above her, heard her breathing catch and then settle. Amara closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, the same prayer she'd prayed every night for 3 months. "Please God, if you're listening, please save my mother. I'll do anything. I'll be anything. Just please don't take her from me." The prayer felt hollow tonight, like words spoken into an empty room where no one listened. But she said it anyway, because what else could she do? Sleep came finally, restless and full of dreams about diamonds that turned to dust in her hands. Are you still with me? This story gets even more intense. Drop a in the comments if you're feeling this. Morning came too early. The neighborhood woke as it always did, with the rooster crowing from the compound next door, generators starting up, water vendors shouting their prices, children being scolded into school uniforms. Grey dawn light filtered through the torn curtain. Amara woke with the ring's weight already heavy in her mind. She rose quietly, not wanting to wake Mama, and prepared herself for the journey. She chose her best outfit, the Sunday dress she rarely wore, a simple yellow cotton dress with white flowers that Mama had sewn for her 3 years ago when times were slightly better. She braided her hair fresh, carefully, wanting to look presentable, respectable. Mama woke as Amara was preparing to leave. "Where are you going? You don't work on Saturdays." Amara hesitated, then decided on truth. "I found something yesterday, Mama. A ring. An expensive one. I'm going to return it to the owner." Mama's face softened, her eyes filling with something between pride and sorrow. "That's my daughter. That's the girl I raised." She reached out a thin hand, and Amara took it, kneeling beside the bed. "God will remember this, baby. When you do the right thing, even when it's hard, God sees. He remembers." Amara nodded, not trusting her voice. She kissed her mother's forehead, left money on the wooden crate for food, and stepped out into the morning. The journey from their room in Yaba to Victoria Island took 2 hours and 3 different modes of transport. First, she walked 20 minutes to the bus stop, her good shoes already pinching her feet. Then she squeezed into a yellow Danfo bus, sitting cramped between a woman with a baby and a man with a bag of yams. The conductor shouting, "Oshodi, Oshodi, enter, enter," as they careened through traffic. From Oshodi, she transferred to another bus toward Victoria Island, the city transforming around her as they drove, buildings getting taller, roads getting cleaner, cars getting newer. By the time they reached Victoria Island, everything looked different. Here, the roads were smooth and wide, the buildings gleamed with glass and steel. Range Rovers and Mercedes-Benzes moved through traffic like sleek sharks. Women walked past in designer outfits that cost more than Amara's yearly salary. She found the 4 Points Hotel easily enough, a tall, elegant building with a circular driveway where uniformed valets parked expensive cars. She stood outside for a moment, feeling small and out of place in her yellow Sunday dress and worn shoes. A security guard looked at her suspiciously. "Can I help you?" Amara swallowed her nervousness. "Please, sir, I need to speak with someone inside. I found something valuable and I want to return it." The guard's expression softened slightly. "What did you find?" "A ring. A diamond ring. I think the owner might be a guest here." He studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the entrance. "Go to the reception desk. Ask for the manager. He'll help you." "Thank you, sir." She walked through the glass doors into a lobby that made her breath catch. Everything gleamed, marble floors so polished she could see her reflection, crystal chandeliers overhead, leather furniture that looked like it had never been sat on, enormous flower arrangements that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The air conditioning hit her like a cool wave, and she shivered slightly. The reception desk curved along one wall, staffed by 2 young women in crisp blazers with perfect makeup and hair. Amara approached slowly, feeling every eye in the lobby turn to her. The receptionist's smile was professional, but her eyes assessed Amara's worn dress, her market shoes, her obvious poverty. "Good morning. How may I help you?" "Good morning. Please, I found a diamond ring yesterday and I want to return it to the owner. I think they might be staying here." The inscription says cheek, the receptionist's professional mask slipped for just a moment, her eyebrows rising. "You found a ring?" "Yes, ma. In Yaba Market. I want to return it." The second receptionist leaned over, whispering something quickly. The first woman nodded and picked up the phone, speaking quietly for a moment before hanging up. "Please wait here. The manager will see you." Amara stood to the side, clutching her leather bag, feeling the weight of stares from hotel guests passing through the lobby. A few minutes later, a tall man in a dark suit approached, his expression neutral but curious. The manager. "Good morning. I'm told you found something valuable." "Yes, sir." Amara reached into her bag and carefully unwrapped the ring, holding it out in her palm. "I found this yesterday in Yaba Market. It has an inscription, cheek, and a date. I thought maybe someone here reported it missing." The manager's eyes widened at the sight of the ring. He reached for it carefully, holding it up to the light. His expression shifted to something between surprise and respect. This is worth a significant amount of money. And you're returning it?" "It's not mine, sir. It belongs to someone who must be very worried." The manager studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Wait here. I need to make some calls." He walked away toward an office, still holding the ring. Amara stood in the lobby, her heart pounding. She'd done it. She'd found someone who could help locate the owner. Soon this would be over, and she could go home with a clear conscience. What she didn't know was that 20 floors above her, in a luxury penthouse suite, Chidinma Azuka had just woken up and discovered her engagement ring was missing. And Chidinma was about to make this simple act of honesty into a nightmare Amara would never forget. The penthouse suite on the 20th floor of the Four Points Hotel was the kind of place that existed in a different universe from Amara's single room in Yaba. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lagos Lagoon and the city skyline. The furniture was cream leather and dark polished wood. The bathroom alone was larger than Amara's entire living space, with a marble bathtub, gold fixtures and towels so thick and soft they felt like clouds. Chidinma Azuka stood in the middle of this luxury, her face twisted with panic and rage. She was 30 years old, tall and slim with the kind of beauty that came from money and careful maintenance. Light caramel skin kept perfect with expensive creams, long Brazilian weave falling to her waist in glossy waves, nails done weekly, makeup applied with professional skill even at 9 in the morning. She wore a white silk robe over designer lingerie, her feet in soft slippers that cost more than most people's monthly salary. But right now, none of that wealth brought her any comfort. Because her engagement ring, the 3-carat diamond ring that Cheek had custom-made, the ring that cost 45 million naira, the ring that was supposed to seal their engagement at tonight's party where 400 guests were expected, that ring was gone. She tore through the suite like a hurricane, throwing pillows, searching drawers, checking the bathroom counter again and again. Where is it? Where is it? Her voice rose to a shriek. Cheek, it's gone. My ring is gone. Her fiancé, Cheek Okonkwo, sat on the leather sofa with his laptop open, barely looking up. Did you check the bedroom? The bathroom? Of course I checked. She spun to face him, her face flushed. Do you think I'm stupid? It's not here. Someone took it. Cheek finally looked up, his expression shifting from annoyed to concerned. He closed his laptop and stood. He was 34 years old, tall and broad-shouldered with light brown skin, angular features, and the kind of presence that commanded attention in boardrooms. He wore casual clothes, designer jeans, and a white linen shirt. But even dressed down, he radiated wealth and power. His watch alone cost 8 million naira. When did you last see it? Last night, before dinner. I took it off to shower and left it on the bathroom counter. She pointed dramatically toward the marble bathroom. When I went to put it back on this morning, it was gone. Chike walked to the bathroom, checking the counter, the floor, the sink area. Nothing. He came back out, his jaw tightening. Did housekeeping come in? I don't know. Maybe? Chidinma's panic was real now, tears forming in her carefully made-up eyes. Chika, the party is tonight. 400 people. The ring is part of the whole presentation. What are we going to do? He pulled out his phone and called the front desk, his voice firm and commanding. This is Chike Okonkwo in the penthouse suite. My fiancé's engagement ring is missing. I need the manager up here immediately. Also, I want to know which housekeeping staff had access to this room in the last 24 hours. He listened for a moment, then his expression changed. Someone found it. Where? He paused, listening, then his face darkened. How long have they been here? And you didn't call me immediately? Chidinma moved closer, grabbing his arm. What? What happened? Chika lowered the phone slightly. Someone brought a ring to the front desk. They're saying they found it in Yaba Market and want to return it. Chidinma's face transformed, relief flashing for just a moment before being replaced by something harder, colder. Wait. Yaba Market. How did my ring get to Yaba Market? She snatched the phone from Chika's hand. Who found it? Who has my ring? Tell me now. The manager's voice came through small and tinny. A young woman, Ma. She came this morning saying she found it yesterday. She seemed very honest, Ma. She traveled all the way from Yaba to return it. A young woman. Chidinma's eyes narrowed. Bring her up, now, and don't let her leave this hotel. She stabbed at the phone to end the call and threw it on the couch. Cheek reached for her arm. Chidinma, wait. If she found it, and brought it back, we should be thanking her, not thanking her. Chidinma's voice went ice-cold. Chaika, think about it. How did my ring get from this bathroom to Yaba Market? She pulled away from him, pacing. Someone on the staff stole it. Took it there to sell. This girl probably works with them. She probably got scared when she couldn't sell it, so she's bringing it back hoping for a reward. That's speculation. That's reality. Chidinma spun to face him. These people, you don't understand them like I do. I grew up dealing with staff, with drivers, with all of them. They're always looking for an angle, always trying to take what's not theirs. You're too soft, Cheek. You want to see the best in everyone. But I know better. Cheek's face tightened, but he didn't argue further. This was a familiar pattern in their relationship. He was the one who built businesses and believed in people's potential. She was the one who'd inherited wealth and learned to guard it jealously. They'd been engaged for 3 months, together for 8 months before that, and every week revealed new ways they didn't quite match. But his mother loved her family's connections, her father loved Cheek's business empire, and the engagement had been good publicity for both families. Love, or the lack of it, didn't really factor into the equation. 5 minutes later, the manager knocked on the suite door. Cheek opened it to find the man standing nervously, and behind him a young woman in a simple yellow dress with white flowers, worn shoes, and an expression of careful respect. Chidinma pushed past Cheek. That's her. That's the girl. The manager nodded. Yes, Ma. She came this morning. She has the ring. Bring her in. Amara stepped into the suite, and for a moment she just stared, unable to help herself. She'd never been in a place like this. Didn't know places like this existed outside of movies and foreign magazines. The sheer space of it, the luxury, the casual wealth displayed in every piece of furniture and art on the walls. Then she saw the woman in the white robe and felt immediately out of place. This woman was beautiful in a way that made Amara painfully aware of her own worn dress, her market shoes, her cheap wrapper, her poverty visible in every detail. But she straightened her shoulders and stepped forward. Good morning, Ma. I believe this belongs to you. She reached into her bag, unwrapped the handkerchief, and held out the ring. For a long moment, no one spoke. Chidinma stared at the ring, then at Amara, then back at the ring. Cheeky moved closer, seeing the ring for the first time since it went missing. Relief flooded his face. That's it. Thank God. He looked at Amara. Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing it back. You have no idea, this ring means everything to us. Amara felt a small bloom of warmth in her chest. You're welcome, sir. I found it yesterday in Yaba Market. I wanted to return it as soon as I could. Cheek reached for his wallet. Please let me give you something for your trouble, for your honesty, a reward. But before he could open his wallet, Chidinma moved like a striking snake. She snatched the ring from Amara's palm and stepped back, holding it close to her chest. Her face had gone cold, her eyes hard. Where did you really get this ring? Amara blinked, confused. Ma, I told you. I found it yesterday in Yaba Market, near the main exit, in the dirt. You found it. Chidinma's voice dripped with disbelief. You found a 45 million naira ring just lying in the dirt in Yaba Market. And you expect us to believe that? The warmth in Amara's chest turned to ice. Ma, it's the truth. The truth. Chidinma laughed, sharp and cruel. Let me tell you the truth. This ring was in my bathroom last night, in this hotel, on Victoria Island. So tell me, how did it magically transport itself to Yaba Market? Amara's mouth went dry. I don't know, Ma. I only know I found it yesterday and you stole it. Chidinma stepped closer, her voice rising. You or someone you work with stole it from this room. And when you couldn't sell it, you brought it back hoping for a reward, thinking we were stupid enough to believe your innocent act. No, Ma. Amara's voice shook. I swear I found it. I swear on my mother's life. Don't swear on anything. Chidinma turned to Chaik. Call the police. Now. The room tilted. Amara heard the words but couldn't process them. Police? She'd done the right thing. She'd brought the ring back. How was this happening? Cheek looked uncomfortable. Chidinma, we have the ring back. Maybe we should just what? Let her go? Chidinma's voice went shrill. Chaike, she's a thief, or part of a theft ring. If we don't report this, they'll think they can steal from us again. We need to make an example. Amara found her voice, panic making it higher than normal. Please, Ma, sir, I didn't steal anything. I'm not a thief. I work hard. I take care of my mother. My mother is sick. That's why I... She stopped, realizing how it sounded. Your mother is sick. Chidinma pounced on it. So you needed money, which is why you stole an expensive ring. Thank you for confirming it. No, that's not. Amara's eyes filled with tears. I only meant I could have sold it if I wanted to. I could have taken the money and helped my mother. But I didn't. Because it's not mine. Because it's wrong. Cheek's face softened. He stepped toward Chidinma, speaking quietly. Listen to her. She's telling the truth. You can hear it in her voice. If she wanted money, she wouldn't have brought it back. Chidinma whirled on him. Your problem, Cheke, is that you trust everyone. You think everyone is good. But these people, she gestured dismissively at Amara, they're always working an angle. She probably came here hoping you'd be so grateful you'd give her millions in reward money. I don't want millions. Amara wiped at her tears angrily. I don't want anything. I just wanted to do the right thing. The right thing. Chidinma turned back to the manager, who'd been standing frozen by the door. Call security. Have them hold her until the police arrive. I'm pressing charges. I'm getting emotional over here. Smash that like button and comment your vibe right now. Happy, curious, or emotional, drop the emoji that fits you best. Because this story is about to take a crazy turn. The police station in Victoria Island was nothing like the neighborhood station near Amara's home in Yaba. Here, everything was newer, cleaner, with air conditioning that actually worked, and officers who looked crisp in their uniforms. But the interrogation room where they'd put Amara was still a small windowless space with concrete walls, a metal table, and 3 chairs. Still a place designed to make you feel guilty whether you were or not. Amara sat in one of the metal chairs, her hands folded on the table in front of her, trying not to shake. Her yellow Sunday dress felt wrong here, too bright, too optimistic for the grey reality of this room. Her leather bag sat on the table, already searched by the police, its contents, her notebook, her handkerchief, her small purse with 40 naira inside, spread out like evidence of some crime she didn't understand. 2 officers stood near the door, talking quietly. One of them, a woman with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie ever told, kept glancing at Amara with undisguised suspicion. The other, a younger man who seemed less certain, occasionally looked at Amara with something that might have been sympathy. The door opened and Chidinma entered, now dressed in a cream designer pantsuit that probably cost more than Amara's annual salary. Her makeup refreshed, her hair perfect, every inch of her screaming wealth and power and control. Behind her came Cheek, wearing a dark blue suit now, looking every bit the billionaire businessman he was. And finally, a man in an expensive grey suit carrying a leather briefcase, obviously their lawyer. The female officer straightened immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Okonkwo, Miss Azuka." She gestured to the empty chairs across from Amara. "Please, sit. We'll take your statements now." Chidinma sat, placing her designer handbag on the table with deliberate precision. She looked directly at Amara, her eyes cold. Her ring, returned and cleaned, now sparkled on her finger like a weapon. "That's her. That's the girl who stole my ring." Amara's head snapped up. "I didn't steal it. I found it. I brought it back." The female officer held up a hand. "We'll get to your statement. Right now, I need to hear from Miss Azuka." She pulled out a notebook. "Miss Azuka, please tell me exactly what happened." Chidinma launched into her story, her voice smooth and confident. "Yesterday afternoon, I removed my engagement ring before taking a shower in our hotel suite. I placed it on the bathroom counter. When I finished showering and getting dressed, I went down to the hotel restaurant for dinner with my fiancée." She gestured elegantly at Chike. "We returned to the suite around 10 p.m. and went to bed. This morning when I woke up, I went to put my ring back on and discovered it was missing." The officer took notes. "And what time did you discover it missing?" "Around 8:30 this morning." "Did you notify the hotel immediately?" "Yes, I called the manager at approximately 8:45 a.m. Within minutes, I was informed that someone had brought a ring matching the description to the front desk." She paused dramatically. "That someone is her." She pointed at Amara. The officer turned to Amara. "And you are?" "Amara Okafor, Ma." "Miss Okafor, how did you come to possess this ring?" Amara took a breath, trying to keep her voice steady. "I found it yesterday evening in Yaba Market. Around 6 p.m., I was walking home from work and I saw it in the dirt near the market exit. I picked it up and saw it was valuable, so I decided to find the owner and return it." The female officer's expression didn't change. "And why did you think the owner would be at a hotel in Victoria Island?" Amara explained about the inscription, about asking Mrs. Obiag's sister who worked at hotels, about traveling this morning to return it. As she spoke, she watched the officer's face, trying to gauge if she was being believed. But the woman's expression remained neutral, professional, giving nothing away. When Amara finished, the officer looked at Chidinma. "Miss Azuka, can you explain how your ring traveled from your hotel bathroom in Victoria Island to Yaba Market?" Chidinma leaned forward, her voice taking on a tone of patient explanation, as if speaking to a child. "That's exactly my point, officer. It didn't travel itself. Someone took it from my bathroom. Someone on the hotel staff, most likely. They took it to Yaba Market to sell it, probably to a fence they work with regularly. She glanced at Amara with contempt. This girl is either the thief herself, or she's working with the actual thief and came to return it when they got scared. That's not true, Amara's voice broke. I don't work at the hotel. I've never been there before today. I don't know anyone who works there. The young male officer spoke up for the first time. Miss Azuka, do you have any evidence that Miss Okafor was in your hotel suite? Any witnesses who saw her there? Chidinma's lawyer cleared his throat. Officer, the burden of proof in a theft case doesn't require witnesses if the possession of stolen property is established. My client's ring was in her private hotel suite. It was taken without permission. Hours later, this woman, he gestured at Amara, appears with the exact item. The sequence of events speaks for itself. Cheeky finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. I don't think she stole it. His words hung in the air. Chidinma turned to him sharply, but he continued, Look at her. She's scared, yes. But does she look like someone running a theft operation? She could have sold that ring yesterday, could have made enough money to change her life. But she didn't. She brought it back. That means something. The female officer studied Cheek. Mr. Okonkwo, are you saying you don't want to press charges? Before Cheeky could answer, Chidinma cut in. I'm pressing charges. I don't care what he thinks. This girl is either a thief or an accomplice, and I want her prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Amara felt the room closing in. Her breathing came faster, shallower. This couldn't be happening. She'd done the right thing. She'd resisted temptation, traveled for hours, brought back something valuable. And now she was being treated like a criminal. The door opened and another officer entered, holding a phone. He walked to the female officer and spoke quietly. She listened, her expression changing slightly. She stood. Excuse me, I need to take this call. She left the room. The male officer remained, looking uncomfortable. The silence stretched. Chidinma checked her own phone, scrolling through messages with manicured nails. Chike stared at the table, his jaw tight. The lawyer made notes in a leather-bound pad. And Amara sat frozen, trying not to cry, trying not to think about Mama at home, wondering where she was, worrying. When the female officer returned, her expression was different, more thoughtful. She sat down and looked directly at Amara. Miss Okafor, I just spoke with the hotel manager. He reviewed security footage from yesterday. The footage shows that no one from housekeeping entered the penthouse suite between the time Miss Azuka says she left the ring there and when she discovered it missing. She paused. It also shows Miss Azuka leaving the hotel suite at 7 p.m. yesterday, carrying a large shopping bag. She returned at 10 p.m. without the bag. The room went very still. Chidinma's face flushed. What does that have to do with anything? I went shopping. I probably left the bag in the car. The manager also mentioned that Miss Azuka and Mr. Okonkwo visited several shops along Victoria Island yesterday evening. The officer pulled out her own phone, showing a map. One of those shops is called Bella's Boutique. It's approximately 2 kilometers from Yaba Market. Chidinma's face went pale, then red. Are you suggesting, her voice rose, that I lost my own ring? The officer's expression remained neutral. I'm suggesting that there are other possible explanations for how the ring ended up in Yaba Market besides theft. Perhaps it fell out of your bag while shopping. Perhaps you removed it in a shop and forgot to put it back on. That's ridiculous. I never took it off. Cheek leaned forward. Chidinma, you did take it off. I remember now, at Bella's Boutique. You were trying on dresses and you took the ring off because you didn't want to snag the fabric. I did not. You did. I specifically remember because you handed it to me to hold and I put it in my pocket. Then his face changed. Remembering, you asked for it back to take a picture of one of the dresses, and I gave it to you. After that, he looked at her meaningfully. I don't remember seeing it again. Chidinma stood abruptly. This is absurd. You're taking her side. I'm trying to figure out the truth. Chika stood as well. And the truth is looking a lot like you lost the ring accidentally and now you're trying to blame this girl because you're embarrassed. The lawyer touched Chidinma's arm. Perhaps we should step outside and discuss. Chidinma pulled her arm away. She looked around the room, at the officers who were no longer treating her with automatic deference, at Cheek, whose face showed disappointment, at Amara, who sat with tears streaming down her face. Her expression hardened. Fine, even if I did accidentally drop it, that doesn't change the fact that she had it. She could have sold it. She had possession of stolen property. Found property, the young officer corrected quietly. If it was lost, not stolen, then she found it. That's not a crime. The female officer stood. Miss Azuka, based on what we've heard, and based on the security footage showing no one entered your suite and showing you carrying a bag near Yaba Market, I don't believe we have grounds for a theft charge. She looked at Amara. Miss Okafor, you're free to go. Amara couldn't move at first. The words didn't register. Free to go. After hours of interrogation, accusation, fear, she was just free. The young officer helped her gather her belongings, gently placing her notebook, handkerchief, and purse back in her leather bag. He even held the door open for her. The female officer nodded respectfully. Thank you for your honesty, Miss Okafor. Nigeria needs more citizens like you. Amara stumbled out of the interrogation room into the station's main area, her legs shaking, her whole body trembling with released tension. Behind her, she heard Chidinma's voice rising in anger, heard the lawyer trying to calm her, heard Chika saying something firm and final. She made it outside into the late afternoon sun before her legs gave out. She sat on the concrete steps of the police station and cried, not from relief but from exhaustion, from the shock of how close she'd come to disaster, from the realization of how cruel the world could be even when you tried to do right. Wait until you see what happens next. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. You don't want to miss how this ends. A shadow fell across her. She looked up to find Chika standing there, his hands in his pockets, his expression conflicted. He sat down beside her on the steps, maintaining a respectful distance. I'm sorry. His voice was quiet. I'm so sorry for what she put you through. Amara wiped her face with the back of her hand. You don't have to apologize, sir. Yes, I do. He stared out at the parking lot. She was wrong. Completely wrong. And I should have stopped her sooner. They sat in silence for a moment, then Chika reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Please, take this. It's the least I can do. Amara didn't reach for it. I didn't do it for money, sir. I know. That's exactly why you deserve it. He set the envelope on the step between them. Inside is 500,000 naira for your mother's treatment. I heard you mention she was sick. Amara's head snapped toward him. 500,000. Sir, that's too much. I can't. You can. You risked everything to do the right thing. Let me do the right thing now. He stood. The money is yours. Use it for your mother. Get her the treatment she needs. He started to walk away, then turned back. And Amara? Keep being honest. The world needs people like you, even when it doesn't deserve them. He walked to his car, got in, and drove away. Amara sat on the steps, holding the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was more money than she'd ever seen, enough to save Mama, enough to change everything. She thought about Chidinma's face, twisted with anger and disbelief that a poor girl had been honest. She thought about the police officers who'd automatically assumed her guilt because of her worn dress and market shoes. She thought about how close she'd come to jail, all because she'd tried to do the right thing. But she also thought about Cheek's words, the world needs people like you. And about the female officer's nod of respect, and about this envelope, this impossible gift, this answer to prayers she'd whispered every night for months. She stood, tucked the envelope carefully into her leather bag, and began the long journey home to Mama. This time, she'd use that money for a taxi. This time, she could afford the comfort. What Amara didn't know yet, what she couldn't see as she traveled back toward Yaba with a fortune in her bag and tears drying on her cheeks, was that her story was far from over. Because Chidinma Azuka was not a woman who accepted defeat, and what happened next would test Amara in ways she never imagined. But for now, for this moment, she had saved her mother. And that was enough. 3 weeks later, Mama Amara walked without coughing. The transformation wasn't a miracle, it was medicine, the expensive kind that actually worked, the kind they'd never been able to afford before. The doctor at Lagos University Teaching Hospital, a kind woman with greying hair and steady hands, had looked at Mama's test results with obvious relief. Mrs. Okafor, your daughter came in time. Another month and we couldn't have helped you, but with this treatment, with the medications we've prescribed, you can recover. Not completely, she'd been honest, but enough. Enough to live, to breathe without pain, to see your daughter's future. Amara had cried in that hospital corridor, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief and gratitude. Cheek's 500,000 naira had covered the full treatment, the hospital stay, the medication for 6 months, and still left enough to pay 3 months' rent in advance and buy proper food. For the first time in years, their small room felt like home, instead of a place where they were slowly dying. Mama gained weight. Her face filled out, color returning to her cheeks. She could sit up without struggle, could walk to the bathroom without stopping to catch her breath, could even talk about the future without the shadow of death hanging over every word. She cooked again, simple meals of rice and stew, the smell filling their room and making it feel alive. But with the relief came questions. Mama had asked repeatedly where the money came from. Amara had told her the truth, the whole story, the finding of the ring, the accusation, the police station, Cheeky's gift. Mama had listened with tears streaming down her face. My daughter, you could have kept that ring. Could have sold it. Could have saved me without anyone knowing. But you chose the hard path, and God rewarded you for it. Amara had nodded, but privately she wasn't so sure about the reward part. Yes, Mama was better. Yes, they had money for now. But the memory of Chidinma's face, the cold certainty of her accusations, the feeling of being treated like a criminal when she'd done nothing wrong, those memories haunted her dreams. She'd returned to work at Mrs. Obiag's fabric shop, grateful to still have a job. Mrs. Obiag had been shocked by the whole story when Amara finally told her, this woman, this Chidinma, she no get sense at all. You return her property and she won't put you for prison. Some people, even with all their money, they no get brain. Life slowly returned to a new kind of normal. Better than before, certainly. Mama healthy, rent paid, food in the pot. But Amara felt changed. Something had hardened in her, a protective shell built from the experience of learning that honesty didn't always lead to reward, that doing right sometimes led straight into danger. Then one afternoon, as Amara was arranging bolts of Ankara fabric in the shop, her phone rang. A Lagos number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her press accept. Hello. Is this Amara Okafor? A male voice, educated, formal. Yes, this is she. Miss Okafor, my name is Femi Adewale. I'm a journalist with The Guardian newspaper. I'm calling about an incident that occurred 3 weeks ago involving you, a lost engagement ring, and a billionaire couple. Amara's stomach dropped. Who told you about that? I have sources at the Victoria Island police station. The officer's voice was friendly but persistent. I'd like to interview you for a story I'm working on about honesty in modern Nigeria. Your story is exactly the kind of thing people need to hear. I don't want to be in any newspaper, sir. Miss Okafor, I understand your hesitation. But think about it. Your story could inspire others, could show that integrity still exists. Plus, he added, there might be opportunities that come from the publicity. Other people wanting to help someone who did such a good thing. Amara thought for a moment. She remembered the feeling of sitting in that police station, of being accused, of being powerless. Maybe telling her side would help. Maybe people should know what happened. Okay, she said slowly. What do you need to know? The interview took an hour. Femi asked everything, her background, her mother's illness, finding the ring, the decision to return it, the police station, Chidinma's accusations, Chiki's gift. Amara answered honestly, holding nothing back. When it was done, Femi promised to send her a copy before publication. The story ran 4 days later on the front page of The Guardian's Sunday edition. The headline read, The Honest Poor Girl Who Taught a Billionaire Humility. The article told everything, with Amara's picture from her phone, a young woman in her yellow Sunday dress standing outside the police station. By Monday morning, the story had gone viral. Social media exploded with reactions. Twitter users shared it thousands of times with hashtags like Madai Amara Okafor, Honesty Matters, Poor Girl Rich Heart. Some praised her, calling her a hero, a role model, proof that good people still existed. Others criticized Chidinma, calling her cruel, out of touch, a villain straight from a Nollywood movie. But not everyone was supportive. Some people, especially online, questioned Amara's motives. She probably returned it, hoping for a bigger reward. Or she's just using this story to get famous now. The cynicism hurt, but Amara tried to ignore it. What she couldn't ignore was the message she received on Wednesday afternoon. It came through Instagram from an account she didn't recognize. But when she opened it, she recognized the profile picture immediately. Chidinma. The message was short and venomous. You think you've won. You think telling your sob story to newspapers makes you special. You're nothing. A nobody who got lucky. And when I'm done with you, everyone will know what you really are. Amara's hands shook as she read it. She showed it to Mama, who looked worried. Maybe you should report this to police. And say what, Mama? That she sent a mean message. They won't do anything. Then ignore her. She's just angry because the newspaper made her look bad. But Amara couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over, and 3 days later, her feeling proved correct. She was at work, helping a customer choose between 2 styles of George fabric, when Mrs. Obiag called her to the back office. "Amara, come, we need to talk." The tone made Amara nervous. She excused herself and went to the small office at the rear of the shop. Mrs. Obiagu sat behind the desk, her usually friendly face troubled. "Sit down, my daughter." Amara sat, her stomach churning. "What's wrong, Ma?" Mrs. Obiagu sighed deeply. "I received a call today, from a lawyer," she paused, "representing Miss Chidinma Azuka. The woman from your story." Amara's blood went cold. "What did he want?" "He's threatening to sue me, claimed that you stole fabric from my shop before, that I covered it up, that I'm running an establishment that trains thieves." Mrs. Obiagu's voice trembled. "Amara, I know this is nonsense. I know you never stole anything. But this lawyer, he's from a big firm. He say they will destroy my business unless—" She stopped. "Unless what?" "Unless I fire you and publicly state that you are dishonest." The words hung in the air between them. Amara felt like she'd been slapped. "They want you to lie about me. They want to destroy my reputation." Mrs. Obiagu reached across the desk and took Amara's hand. "I told them I would do no such thing. I told them you are the most honest girl I've ever employed. I told them to take their threats and their lawsuit and go to hell." Despite everything, Amara smiled slightly. "Thank you, Ma." But Mrs. Obiagu continued, her face serious. "This is not over. These people, they have money and power. They can make our lives very difficult." She squeezed Amara's hand. "I want you to know, no matter what happens, I believe you, I support you. But you need to be prepared. This woman, she's coming for you." That night, Amara sat with Mama in their room, both of them quiet. The medicine bottles lined up on their wooden crate represented healing and hope, but the threat hanging over them felt heavier than any sickness. "Maybe I shouldn't have talked to that newspaper," Amara said quietly. "Maybe I should have just stayed quiet and let it go." Mama shook her head firmly. "No, my daughter. You told the truth. You did nothing wrong. This woman, she's the one who should be ashamed. She's the one attacking you because her own behavior made her look bad." She reached for Amara's hand. "You know what the Bible says. The truth will set you free. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but truth always wins in the end." Amara wanted to believe that, but as she lay on her mat that night, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still coming. Chidinma had money, power, connections, lawyers. What did Amara have? The truth. Just the truth. And in this world, was that enough? She would find out soon enough. The package arrived on Saturday morning, delivered by a motorcycle courier who made Amara sign 3 different pieces of paper before handing over the thick brown envelope. Inside were legal documents, dense with text and official seals and language Amara didn't fully understand but recognized as dangerous. She took them to Mr. Okafor, no relation despite the shared surname, a retired teacher in their compound who sometimes helped neighbors with official matters. He read through the documents slowly, his face growing more concerned with each page. "My daughter, this is serious." He looked at her over his reading glasses. "They're suing you for defamation and emotional distress, claiming that your newspaper interview damaged Miss Azuka's reputation and caused her psychological harm. They're asking for 20 million naira in damages." 20 million. Amara felt the room spin. "I don't have 20 million naira. I don't have 20,000 naira. How can they? They know that," Mr. Okafor said gently. "That's not the point. The point is to scare you, to make you recant your story, to make you publicly apologize and say you lied. But I didn't lie. Everything in that interview was true." "I know. But proving it in court, fighting this case, that requires lawyers, money, time, things they have and you don't." He set the papers down. "This is a classic intimidation tactic used by wealthy people against those who can't fight back. So what do I do?" Mr. Okafor thought for a moment. "You need legal help, real legal help. And you need someone to tell your side to more people, to make this so public that they can't just bully you into silence." "But who?" "I don't know any lawyers. I can't afford. Let me make some calls." Mr. Okafor stood. "I taught at university for 30 years. I still have contacts. Let me see what I can do." Over the next 2 days, Mr. Okafor worked his network. He called former students, colleagues, friends, and he found someone willing to help. Her name was Barrister Funmi Adeyemi, a human rights lawyer who specialized in cases involving power imbalances and injustice. She was 47 years old, sharp and fierce, with natural hair worn in a short afro and a reputation for taking on fights that other lawyers avoided. She came to meet Amara in their compound on Monday evening. "Miss Okafor," Barrister Funmi said, settling onto the wooden bench outside Amara's room, "I've reviewed your case. I've read the newspaper article, I've seen the legal threats, and I'm going to tell you something very clearly: they have no case." Amara felt a flicker of hope. "They don't?" "No. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. If everything you said was true, which it appears to be, then they can't sue you for saying it. Their case is built on intimidation, not law." She smiled grimly. "But here's what we're going to do. We're going to fight back. Hard." "How?" "First, we're going to file a countersuit. For malicious prosecution, for harassment, for abuse of process. We'll make this expensive and public for them. Second," she pulled out her phone, "we're going to make your story even bigger. I have contacts at television stations, radio programs. We're going to put you everywhere, telling your story, until trying to silence you becomes impossible. But what if they come after me harder? What if then they prove to all of Nigeria exactly what kind of people they are?" Barrister Funmi leaned forward. "Amara, I know you're scared. I know you just want this to go away. But running, hiding, apologizing when you did nothing wrong, that's not justice. And it's not just about you anymore. It's about every poor person who ever returned something valuable and got accused instead of thanked. It's about changing how we think about honesty and integrity in this country." Amara thought about the police station, about Chidinma's cold eyes, about the feeling of being powerless. Then she thought about Mama, healthy because she'd chosen honesty over quick money. She thought about every time someone had assumed she was dishonest simply because she was poor. "Okay," she said quietly, "I'll fight." "Good." Barrister Funmi smiled. "Then let's show them what happens when they pick on the wrong girl." The media campaign started immediately. Barrister Funmi got Amara on Channel's television's morning show, where she told her story to millions of viewers. She appeared on radio programs, gave interviews to online publications. Each time she spoke calmly, clearly, truthfully about what happened. Public opinion shifted hard, social media exploded with support. Celebrities shared her story. A popular musician wrote a song called Amara's Honesty. Church groups invited her to speak. Students at universities started a movement, Ikasha Stand with Amara, holding protests outside Chidinma's family company headquarters. The pressure mounted. Brands started pulling their associations with Chidinma's family business. The hotel where the incident began issued a public statement commending Amara's honesty. Even other wealthy Nigerians began speaking out, distancing themselves from Chidinma's actions. And then Chiki did something unexpected. He called a press conference. Standing before dozens of cameras and reporters, looking tired but determined, he made a statement that changed everything. "My name is Chike Okonkwo, and 3 weeks ago, Miss Amara Okafor returned my fiancé's lost engagement ring. Her honesty and integrity should have been celebrated. Instead, she was accused, threatened, and is now being sued." He paused. "I want to be clear. I do not support this lawsuit. I believe Miss Amara completely, and I'm publicly calling for all legal action against her to be dropped immediately." He continued, "Furthermore, I've ended my engagement to Chidinma Azuka. I cannot marry someone who uses power to hurt innocent people, someone who cannot admit when they're wrong, someone who punishes honesty because it embarrassed them." The reporters erupted with questions, but Chiki simply walked away, leaving his statement to echo across every news outlet in Nigeria. That night, sitting in their room with Mama, Amara watched the coverage on their neighbor's television. She felt strange, not quite victorious, but not defeated either. More like someone who'd stumbled into something much bigger than themselves and was still trying to understand it all. Did this story touch your heart the way it touched mine? Smash that subscribe button for more amazing stories that will restore your faith in human kindness. Like if you believe Amara deserved justice. Comment below and tell us what you learned from this story. I read every single comment and love hearing your thoughts. Ring that notification bell so you never miss these incredible tales of love, hope, and redemption. 2 weeks after Chike's press conference, the lawsuit was quietly dropped. Chidinma's lawyers filed papers withdrawing all claims, citing mutual understanding and resolution. There was no apology, no admission of wrongdoing, just silence where there had been threats. But the story didn't end there. It transformed into something else entirely, something Amara never expected. People started sending money, small donations from ordinary Nigerians touched by her story. A student sent 500 naira with a note saying, "This is all I have, but you deserve it." A market woman sent 2,000 naira saying, "You showed us that poor people can be more honorable than rich ones." A mechanic sent 3,000 naira, writing, "Thank you for making me proud to be honest in my work." The donations kept coming, 10 naira here, 50 naira there, 200 naira from someone, 1,000 from someone else. Within a month, nearly 3 million naira had been donated to a fund Barrister Funmi set up in Amara's name. 3 million naira from ordinary Nigerians who wanted to reward honesty, who wanted to say that doing right mattered, who wanted to prove that sometimes the people with the least give the most. A businessman who'd read her story offered her a job at his import-export company. Real work with a real salary, 40,000 naira a month to start. A church in Lekki offered to pay for Mama to see specialists, to make sure her recovery continued. A university professor offered to help Amara enroll part-time in business school, saying, "Intelligence and character like yours shouldn't be wasted." And Chike, he did something else. He established a foundation in Amara's name, the Honest Heart Foundation, dedicated to helping poor Nigerians who did the right thing even when it cost them. He endowed it with 50 million naira to start and asked Amara to help run it. "I don't know how to run a foundation," she'd protested when he visited her to explain his idea. "Neither did I when I started my first business." Cheek had smiled. "But you know something more important. You know what it feels like to be honest when every circumstance screams at you to be dishonest. You know what it costs and what it's worth. That's the knowledge we need." 6 months later, Amara walked into the foundation's new office in a modest building in Yaba. Not fancy, not Victoria Island, but clean and efficient and real. Her title was community coordinator, and her job was to find people like herself, ordinary Nigerians who'd done extraordinary things through simple honesty, and help them. Mama was healthy, working part-time as a caregiver at a local clinic, her medical expertise from years of watching her own treatment now being used to help others. They'd moved to a better room, 2 rooms actually, with a real bathroom and a kitchen. Nothing luxurious, but safe and comfortable, and theirs. On the foundation's opening day, reporters came to cover the story. One of them asked Amara, "Do you think finding that ring changed your life?" Amara thought about it carefully before answering. "Finding the ring didn't change my life. Choosing to return it did. Choosing honesty over convenience, over survival even, that's what changed everything. Not because of rewards or donations or foundation jobs, though I'm grateful for all that, but because it showed me who I am. It showed me that my character, my integrity, that's something no one can take from me. That's mine, regardless of poverty or wealth." The reporter smiled. "And what would you say to someone facing a similar choice? Someone who found something valuable and is deciding what to do?" Amara looked directly at the camera. "I'd say that honesty is never easy. It often costs you something. But dishonesty costs you more. It costs you yourself. Do the right thing, not because you'll be rewarded, though sometimes you are. Do it because that's who you choose to be. And in the end, that choice, that's the most valuable thing you'll ever own." That evening, Amara sat with Mama on their small balcony, watching the Lagos sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. They sipped zobo from plastic cups, a simple pleasure that tasted like victory. "You know what I'm proudest of?" Mama said quietly. "What, Mama?" "Not that you're healthy, or that I'm working, or that we have nice rooms now. Those things are blessings, yes. But I'm proudest that my daughter stood in the middle of temptation and didn't blink. That you chose the hard road. That you showed the world that poverty doesn't equal dishonesty." She reached over and squeezed Amara's hand. "That's my real wealth. You." Amara squeezed back, tears pricking her eyes. "I learned it from you, Mama." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, 2 women who'd survived illness, poverty, accusation, and hardship, who'd emerged not bitter but stronger, not defeated but triumphant in the ways that truly mattered. Somewhere in Lagos, in a luxury apartment she'd moved into after the broken engagement, Chidinma sat alone scrolling through social media, seeing Amara's face everywhere, seeing her own name associated with cruelty and injustice. The ring on her finger felt heavy now, a reminder not of love, but of the day she'd let pride and prejudice blind her to basic human decency. But this story isn't about her. It's about a poor girl who found a ring worth millions and made a choice that echoed through a nation. It's about how honesty, real soul-deep honesty, is worth more than diamonds. It's about how the smallest acts of integrity can create ripples that touch countless lives. And it's about how sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing doesn't just change your own life. It reminds an entire country what they're supposed to value. 3 years later, the Honest Heart Foundation had helped over 2,000 Nigerians, taxi drivers who returned forgotten laptops, security guards who found and returned jewelry, students who turned in wallets, shop owners who gave back excess change, ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply by being honest. Each one received help, support, sometimes financial assistance, always recognition and respect. Amara, now 27 years old, stood at the foundation's annual gala, dressed in a simple but elegant dress, her natural hair styled beautifully, speaking to a room full of donors, volunteers, and people they'd helped. She told her story one more time, not for attention, but as a reminder of where they'd started and why the work mattered. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. But the moment that mattered most came later, when a young girl, maybe 13, came up to her shyly. "Miss Amara, I found a phone last week at school. An iPhone. I wanted to keep it so badly because my own phone is broken. But I thought about your story and I returned it to the owner." She smiled shyly. "I just wanted to thank you for showing me that being honest makes me strong, not stupid." Amara knelt down to the girl's level. "What's your name?" "Blessing, Ma." "Blessing, you didn't need my story to be honest. That strength was already inside you. I just reminded you it was there." She hugged the girl. "Keep being strong, keep being you." As she watched Blessing walk away, Amara thought about that afternoon in Yaba Market, about the glint of diamonds in the dust, about the choice that had seemed so simple and turned out to change everything. She thought about how close she'd come to keeping the ring, to choosing survival over integrity. She thought about the police station, about Chidinma's accusations, about all the moments when honesty felt like the stupidest decision she'd ever made. But looking around this room full of people whose lives had been touched by the foundation, full of volunteers who believed in integrity, full of donors who wanted to reward and encourage honesty, she knew the truth. Honesty had its price, but dishonesty would have cost her everything that truly mattered. And that, in the end, made all the difference. Until next time, keep believing in the power of honesty and integrity. Keep believing that character matters more than money, that truth matters more than convenience, that who you are is worth more than what you own.